My husband is a liar. He told me we were broke. Meanwhile, he has been bankrolling his side chick, while me and my kids eat breadcrumbs. My marriage is 4 years old. We have twins, a boy and a girl. I earn about $3,500 a month, and my husband makes $5,000. Before the month ends, we always sit down to plan what to buy, what to save, and what to cut out. We don't follow any strict budget. We just make it work. Hi, I'm Emily Dawson. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a marketing coordinator for a small furniture company here in Austin, Texas. I've always been the kind of woman who believes that love and teamwork can solve almost anything. For a long time, I thought my marriage proved that. When I tell people about my marriage, I usually start with the good part, the laughter, the routines, the way we used to dance in the kitchen while dinner was on the stove. We weren't rich, but we were stable. We didn't fight much. We communicated. Or at least I thought we did. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Our twins, Mason and Lily, turned 3 in May. They're the reason I wake up every day with purpose. Every morning, I'd make their breakfast, pack their little lunchboxes, and drop them off at daycare before heading to work. My husband, Ryan, worked in logistics. Long hours, unpredictable days, but a good paycheck. People used to tell us we looked like one of those couples in a home insurance commercial, smiling, young, doing life together. I believed that image with all my heart. Money was tight sometimes, but we made it work. I'd clip coupons, check deals, compare prices online before buying groceries. Ryan handled the bills and rent, and I covered food, daycare, and little extras. Every end of the month, we'd sit on the couch with a notebook, scribbling out what to pay, what to save, and what to push to next month. We always said, as long as we're in this together, we'll be fine. That line, "we're in this together," it used to comfort me. Now it just haunts me. It started small, about 8 months ago. Ryan began coming home late, saying work was getting stressful. He said the company was cutting his hours and that some benefits were being reduced. He looked tired, so I didn't question him. I thought maybe management was giving him a hard time. Then came the financial adjustments. We started eating out less, skipping movie nights, postponing the little things we enjoyed. I even cut back on my skincare routine, not because he asked, but because I thought I was being supportive. That's what wives do, right? We adjust, we sacrifice. Ryan started to look distracted. Some nights, he'd sit beside me on the couch, scrolling through his phone, barely hearing what I said. When I'd ask if something was wrong, he'd smile faintly and say, "Just work, babe, it'll pass." And I believed him. I always did. Until that one day. It was a Friday afternoon, sometime in early spring. I remember because the weather had just started to warm up, and the air smelled like rain and fresh-cut grass. I was at work when I suddenly felt dizzy. My temperature was climbing, and my manager, seeing me struggle to stay focused, told me to go home early and rest. I grabbed my bag, texted Ryan that I wasn't feeling well, and got in my car. Halfway home, I stopped at a pharmacy to grab some medicine. That's when it happened. As I stepped out of the store, I saw someone across the street who looked exactly like Ryan. Same build, same black jacket, same walk. At first, I smiled. What a coincidence, I thought. Maybe he was grabbing lunch nearby. I called his name, waving a little. But he didn't hear me. He was walking fast, and he wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman. Blonde hair, mid-20s, slim, dressed like she worked in an office. She laughed at something he said, and I swear I could hear the sound even across the street. I kept walking toward them, thinking maybe it was a coworker. Maybe they were talking shop. But then I saw it. Ryan reached over and slapped her on the butt. Playfully, familiar, intimate. She laughed again and leaned into him. They kept walking, their hands brushing, bodies close. And just like that, my world stopped. The fever that had been burning through my body evaporated. My throat went dry. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I'd faint. I didn't chase them. I just stood there, watching, until they disappeared around the corner. Then I walked slowly back to my car, shaking. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there in silence, staring at my hands on the steering wheel. The ride home felt like a dream. Everything looked blurry. The radio was off. The streets were quiet, and all I could hear was the echo of my own thoughts. No, that couldn't be him, not Ryan. He wouldn't. But deep down, I knew. When I got home, I did what I always do. I went into autopilot, changed into my pajamas, made something simple for dinner, picked up the kids from daycare, smiled when they ran to me yelling "Mommy," like nothing had happened. Ryan got home late. He looked tired, as usual. He kissed the kids, asked about my day, then kissed me on the forehead and said, "You look pale, Em. You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." We ate dinner quietly that night. He talked about a supposed meeting that ran long, and I nodded like I believed every word. When he fell asleep beside me later, I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. At around midnight, I unlocked his phone. Messages, empty. WhatsApp, nothing but work chats. Instagram DMs, clean. Even the call logs looked boring. If I hadn't seen what I saw that afternoon, I would have believed he was the most faithful man alive. But something in me whispered, check his email. And that's where everything came crashing down. Ryan's email wasn't password protected, at least not the main one. He had a habit of saving passwords on his phone, so once I opened the Gmail app, everything synced right in. At first, it looked normal. Receipts from Amazon, newsletters from Home Depot, work messages. Then I scrolled further down. There it was, a new folder I'd never seen before, tucked between finances and travel. It was titled R. My heart pounded. R. Like what? Receipts? Reports? No, I clicked. The first thing I saw was a string of payment notifications from his bank. Regular transfers. The same name appearing over and over, Rachel P. I didn't know any Rachel. I opened one of the receipts, a $2,000 transfer. Then another, same amount, same name. At the bottom of one message, there was a note, "For you, my sunshine." My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled faster. More receipts, hotel confirmations, restaurant bills. A jewelry store invoice for a necklace that cost more than my monthly salary. There was also an email thread with a subject line that said, "Friday plans. Timing." I clicked it and instantly wished I hadn't. It was a long chain of back and forth messages. Her messages were flirty, full of emojis, inside jokes, and "I miss you" lines. His responses were even worse. Sweet, familiar, like he'd forgotten the tone of his voice with me. And then I saw a line that made my stomach drop. "Can't wait to hold you again. You make all the long work hours worth it." I remember whispering out loud, "You said that to me once." I don't know how long I sat there scrolling. Time didn't exist in that moment. All I could feel was this deep ache spreading through my chest, like something sacred had been ripped open. By 3 a.m., I was still awake. My phone screen glowed against the darkness. I kept thinking about every sacrifice I'd made, every lunch I skipped to save money, every late night I stayed up washing bottles or folding tiny clothes while he worked late. All that trust, all those plans, gone. At some point, I stopped crying. I just went numb. I wiped my face, put the phone down, and stared at him sleeping peacefully beside me. The man I thought I knew, the man I believed in. He looked calm, innocent even, like someone who couldn't possibly lie. But I knew better now. The next morning, I woke up before the kids and made breakfast like nothing happened. Pancakes, eggs, orange juice. I even packed Ryan's lunch for work. Not because I cared, but because I needed time to think. He kissed my cheek before leaving. "Love you, babe," he said. I smiled back, forcing warmth into my voice. "Love you too." But in my head, I added "for now." That week, I pretended everything was normal. But every time he smiled, every time he texted that he'd be running late, I felt my stomach twist. I started watching him, not in a paranoid way, but in a quiet, calculated way. He'd leave for work dinners. He'd come home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. His shirts sometimes had smudges of lipstick near the collar, so faint you'd miss them if you weren't looking closely. The woman in me who once believed in patience and forgiveness started to fade. By the second week, something in me had hardened. I used to tell myself I was a virtuous wife, that being calm, supportive, loyal, even when it hurt, made me strong. But that night changed everything. I stopped praying for our marriage. I stopped checking in to see if he'd eaten. I stopped being his safe place. Instead, I started planning my escape. Quietly, strategically. I changed the password on my own email. I opened a new savings account under my maiden name. I started saying yes to after-work dinners and networking events I used to decline. I realized I'd spent so long revolving around him that I didn't even remember what I wanted anymore. Then, something unexpected happened. One evening, after a marketing event downtown, I met Nathan, a real estate agent. Charming, grounded, the kind of man who asked questions and actually listened. We talked for hours, not flirtatiously, just freely. I hadn't felt that kind of attention in years. He didn't know I was married at first. When I mentioned it, he smiled politely and said, "He's a lucky guy." I laughed under my breath and said, "You'd think so." For the next few weeks, Nathan and I became friends. He'd text sometimes, ask how my day was, send funny memes. It felt innocent, at least in the beginning. But something about those messages reminded me of what I'd lost, being seen, being heard. Then there was Alex, a photographer I met through work, confident, older, the kind of man who looked at you like he could read your thoughts. Both of them, without even knowing it, became my escape routes. Ryan, on the other hand, was sinking deeper into his lies. He still didn't know I knew. Still thought I was his understanding wife, the one who'd smile through the silence and pretend everything was fine. He had no idea that while he was out playing boyfriend to someone else, I was quietly building a new version of myself. It's strange how betrayal changes you. At first, it breaks you open, like someone split your chest and poured in acid. But then, if you survive that part, something else happens. You start to rebuild. Harder, smarter, quieter. That's what happened to me. Happiness and quieter. I didn't scream or throw his things out. I didn't even confront him. Not yet. I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him to believe he was still winning. Because when people feel safe, they make mistakes. Meanwhile, I was transforming. I started dressing up again. Not for him, not for anyone really, but for me. I bought a new wig. Not the cheap one I used to hide behind when we were short on money, but one that made me look like the woman I'd forgotten I could be. It cost nearly $700, more than what I used to spend on groceries for 2 weeks. But when I looked in the mirror, it felt like power. At work, people noticed. My boss, Miranda, pulled me aside one day and said, "Emily, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You look like you finally believe in yourself." That hit me. I did feel different. I wasn't the tired mom holding everything together anymore. I was a woman with options. Nathan noticed too. He started showing up at the cafe across from my office around lunch hour by coincidence. Sometimes he'd bring an extra coffee, just in case you like vanilla lattes. Other times, he'd just smile and ask about my projects. There was nothing inappropriate. Not yet. But I won't lie. I liked the attention. He'd listen to me talk about my work, my kids, even my frustrations. When I once apologized for talking too much, he said, "You don't. You talk like someone who hasn't been heard in a long time." That line stayed with me. Meanwhile, Ryan had no clue. He'd come home late, kiss the kids goodnight, and scroll through his phone until he fell asleep beside me. Sometimes he'd roll over and say, "You've been quiet lately." And I'd smile and reply, "Just tired." Inside, I was planning my next move. I started tracking our finances. I found the joint account where he was funneling money out each month. $3,500 gone consistently to that same name, Rachel P. I wasn't even angry anymore. Just cold, focused. Because here's the thing. When a man betrays you, the world expects you to either cry or forgive. But no one talks about the quiet third option, strategy. I started moving my own money, small amounts at first. Then I began working freelance projects on the side, using my writing and marketing skills. It felt good, like I had control again. Then came the day that changed everything. One afternoon, I left work early to pick up the kids. On my way out, I saw Ryan's car parked outside a restaurant, the same car I'd helped him choose 3 years earlier. I don't know what made me stop. Maybe instinct, maybe closure. Through the glass, I saw him, laughing. Not just smiling, full, head-thrown-back laughter. And across from him sat a woman I recognized immediately. Rachel. She used to work at my gym. Younger, pretty, the kind of woman who took mirror selfies with captions like, "Know your worth." I watched them for maybe 2 minutes. They looked happy, comfortable, like they'd done this 100 times. He even reached across the table and touched her hand. That was all I needed to see. I didn't confront them. I didn't make a scene. I just turned, walked back to my car, and drove home in silence. That night, I started filming. Not him, me. I placed my phone on the counter, pressed record, and started talking. No script, no plan, just honesty. I said, "Hi, my name's Emily Dawson. I'm 33, and this is the story of how I found out my husband was living a double life." I didn't plan to post it then. I just needed proof of who I was at that moment. Broken but not destroyed. The next few weeks, I kept recording. Little pieces of my life. School drop-offs, grocery runs, quiet tears in my car. I didn't know it then, but those videos would later become part of my healing, and eventually my story online. But back then, I was still living it. Nathan noticed something was off. One evening he texted, "You okay? You've been quieter lately." I typed and deleted my response 3 times before finally sending, "Just realizing the person I thought I knew might not exist." He replied, "Then it's time you start remembering you do." That message, I cried when I read it, because it reminded me I wasn't invisible. A week later, I agreed to meet Nathan for dinner. Not as a date, just 2 friends. At least, that's what I told myself. But when I got home that night, and Ryan asked, "Where were you?" I didn't lie. I said, "Out with someone who listens." He froze. His eyes flickered. Guilt first, then fear. And that's when I knew. He could cheat, but he couldn't handle the thought of me being seen by someone else. After that night, everything between Ryan and me shifted, but not in the way most people expect. He didn't blow up or accuse me of anything. He just started watching me differently, the same way I'd once watched him when I first suspected something. The irony wasn't lost on me. The next morning he made me breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, even fresh orange juice. It was the first time in months he'd done that. I almost laughed. Guilt is funny like that. It makes people act decent for a while, hoping good behavior will erase bad choices. I sat at the table, eating quietly, and said thanks. "These are good." He smiled, relieved. "Just trying to help. You've been working hard lately." "Yeah," I said. "I have." He didn't ask where. And I didn't volunteer that I'd just accepted a remote job offer with a creative agency in Chicago. $7,000 a month. Double my old pay. I was done waiting for his approval. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because what came next, even I didn't see coming. Over the next few weeks, I got busier. New projects, new people, new energy. Nathan and I still talked, but I kept it friendly. Boundaries mattered. Not for him, but for me. I needed to rebuild who I was without depending on another man to validate it. Still, he was kind, steady, a reminder that not all men were careless with the hearts that loved them. Meanwhile, Ryan's little empire started showing cracks. One evening, he came home fuming. "They're cutting my hours again. Can you believe it?" I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Oh, that's strange. I thought they promoted you." He blinked, caught off guard. "Who told you that?" "You did," I said smoothly. "Months ago." "Or did I get that wrong?" He stammered something about a temporary restructure. I nodded and went back to typing. But inside, I was smiling. Because I knew. The truth was, he'd been dipping into his savings to keep up his lifestyle with Rachel. And the guilt, or maybe fear, was starting to eat at him. I didn't have to expose him. Life was already doing that for me. Pause, but patience, and getting back to typing. My twins, Ethan and Lily, were 4 then, curious and bright. They adored their dad, and I never tried to change that. Whatever happened between us, I wanted them to have both parents, even if one of them was faking it. But children are smarter than we think. One day, Lily looked at me and said, "Mommy, Daddy's always on his phone. Are you mad at him?" I froze, knelt and brushed her hair back. "No, sweetheart. Mommy's not mad. Just thinking a lot lately." "Thinking about what?" she asked. "About how to make us all happier," I said, smiling softly. And I meant it. I wanted peace more than revenge. But peace, I learned, sometimes looks like letting someone drown in the chaos they built for themselves. By then, I'd saved enough to move if I wanted to. I even found a small townhouse about 20 minutes away. But I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. There was something I needed first. Clarity. One Saturday morning, Ryan left early for a client meeting. I waited an hour, then called the restaurant he liked to take Rachel to. When the hostess picked up, I said, "Hi, I'm calling to confirm a reservation for Ryan Dawson, party of 2. She replied, "Yes, ma'am, 11:30 a.m. Shall I confirm?" My throat tightened. "No, thank you," I said. I just needed to know. I sat on the couch for a long time after that. The kind of silence that feels like you're underwater. Too quiet, too still. That was the moment I stopped being in love with him. Later that afternoon, when he walked through the door pretending to be tired from work, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "How was lunch?" He froze, just like that. 1 second of panic, then recovery. "What lunch?" "Exactly," I said, and went upstairs. He followed me a few minutes later, defensive, agitated. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said calmly, "I know." He started denying, explaining, spitting stories that contradicted themselves within seconds. It would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. Finally, he asked, "What do you want from me?" I looked at him, the man I once built my life around, and said, "Nothing. That's the point." He stared at me confused, because in his world, women only had 2 settings: angry or forgiving. He didn't understand indifference. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next few weeks, he tried to be the good husband again. Flowers, random compliments, helping with dishes. But once you've seen betrayal up close, the gestures feel empty. One evening, while he was helping Ethan build a Lego tower, I caught myself just watching, detached, like I was observing a stranger in my house. I realized I didn't hate him. I just didn't care anymore. And that kind of silence, it's louder than any argument. A few days later, I got a text from Nathan. "Just checking in. How's your week?" I stared at the screen for a while before typing back. "Better than last week. I'm learning to breathe again." He replied, "Good. You deserve that." It wasn't flirtation. It was kindness. And for the first time, I let myself feel it without guilt. By the time my next paycheck came in, I decided to do something just for me. I walked into a high-end salon downtown and spent $1,500 on a wig. Human hair, perfect color, perfect fit. The old me would have hesitated. The new me smiled and swiped her card without a blink. As I left, the stylist said, "You look like someone who just stepped into her power." I laughed. Maybe I did. Because that's what it felt like. Power. Not over Ryan, not over men, just over myself. The night Ryan finally found out was quiet. Too quiet. It was a Thursday, one of those calm, ordinary evenings that turn into the kind of night you never forget. The kids had fallen asleep early after movie night. The house smelled faintly of popcorn and fabric softener. Ryan was in the living room, scrolling through his phone like always. I was at my desk upstairs, editing a client project. My phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. It was short. "Thinking of you. Hope you're smiling tonight." I smiled, not because of him exactly, but because of the peace in that moment. The simple joy of knowing I had survived something meant to break me. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs. Ryan appeared in the doorway, holding my phone. My heart didn't even race. I'd stopped being afraid of him a long time ago. He looked at me like a man who'd finally seen a ghost. "Who's Nathan?" I closed my laptop slowly. Someone who actually listens when I speak. His jaw tightened. "Are you serious right now?" I stood up, calm as ever. "I'm serious about a lot of things, Ryan. Like honesty, like respect. Things you gave up months ago." He threw my phone onto the bed. "You're cheating on me." I almost laughed. "That's funny coming from you." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, please," I said, stepping closer. "You think I didn't know about Rachel? The hotels? The gifts? The fake pay cuts?" The color drained from his face. I picked up my phone and showed him the screenshots. The emails I'd quietly backed up months ago. His credit card charges, the transfers, the photos he thought he'd deleted. He just stood there, speechless. For once, he didn't have a story. No lies, no excuses. Just the heavy silence of guilt filling the room. "You know what's crazy?" I said softly. "I could have left. I could have ruined you. But I stayed. Not for you, but for my kids. For stability. And in that time, I built a whole new life without you even noticing." He ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. "Emily, you're overreacting. It was a mistake. $8,000 a month at a full-time girlfriend is not a mistake," I snapped. My voice didn't rise. It sharpened. "It's a choice, one you made every single day." He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "Don't bother. I've already decided how this ends." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, walking past him, "you have two choices." He followed me down the stairs, his voice growing desperate. "Emily, wait." I stopped by the kitchen counter, turned and looked him dead in the eye. "Option 1, I said. "We both forgive each other, pray, cut off every outside distraction, and rebuild what's left for the kids." He frowned, searching my face. "And option 2? I smiled, the kind of smile that says you've already made peace with your own storm. "We divorce. You get your freedom, and I get my peace." He stared at me, jaw tight, eyes full of confusion and pride and disbelief all tangled together. "You're serious?" "More than ever," I said quietly. He laughed bitterly. "You won't survive without me." That one made me smile wider. "Ryan, I already have." And that's when it hit him. He looked around the house, the new furniture, the little upgrades, the quiet confidence I wore like perfume. He finally saw it. I wasn't the same woman anymore. He stepped back, almost stumbling, as if the realization physically hit him. "You've changed," he muttered. "Good," I said, "because that's the whole point." Then I walked upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and for the first time in years, slept peacefully, without the weight of someone else's betrayal pressing against my chest. The next morning, I woke up before the kids. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and watched the sunrise pour gold light across the kitchen floor. It felt symbolic, like the world was reminding me that endings can be gentle too. When Ryan came down, he didn't say a word, just poured his own coffee and sat in silence. The kids ran out a few minutes later, giggling and climbing onto his lap like nothing had changed. And maybe that was the point. Life kept moving, whether he was ready for it or not. He left for work without a goodbye. That was fine. I sat at the table, sipped my coffee, and opened my laptop to start the day. My inbox was full. New clients, new collaborations, even a small brand deal from one of my online videos. Yes, I'd started sharing my story online, carefully, piece by piece, not to shame him, but to heal me. The comments poured in. I've been there, Emily. Thank you for sharing. You made me believe I can start over too. This woman is pure strength. Somewhere between my first post and my third, my heartbreak turned into hope. For me and for the thousands of women who saw themselves in my story. That night, as I tucked Ethan and Lily into bed, Ethan looked up and said, "Mom, why are you smiling so much lately?" I kissed his forehead. "Because I finally remembered who I am." He grinned sleepily. "I like this version of you." Me too, I thought. Me too. After they fell asleep, I went downstairs, lit a candle, and opened my camera. The red light blinked on. I took a deep breath. "Hi," I said softly, looking into the lens. "It's Emily. You've been asking for an update, so here it is." I paused, choosing my words carefully. My husband found out. And guess what? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply told him the truth, that he no longer gets to break me, that the version of me who begged for love doesn't exist anymore. I smiled faintly. And if you're watching this, I hope you take one thing away. You don't have to wait for permission to start again. Betrayal might change you, but it can also free you. I leaned closer, my voice calm but certain. Then I stopped recording, exhaled deeply, and closed the camera app. The candle flickered. The house was still. Outside, the city hummed softly, distant, alive, steady. I glanced toward the cupboard where my wedding ring still sat. I didn't hate it anymore. It was just a symbol of who I used to be. Some nights, I still wondered if Ryan would change, if Gate would ever lead him to growth. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. My story had already moved forward. A few weeks later, I signed the lease on my new townhouse, small, cozy, with a little backyard where the twins could play. As I unpacked boxes, I found a photo of our family from happier days. I didn't throw it away. I just tucked it in a drawer. A reminder that even endings have roots in love. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Some nights I'd sit on the porch, watching the twins chase fireflies, and think about how far I'd come. The pain, the discovery, the silence, the power, all of it had shaped me into someone stronger. And in that quiet, peaceful glow, I whispered to myself what I wish every woman could believe after betrayal. You didn't lose. You just woke up. Click on the next story waiting for you on screen. Because trust me, the betrayals only get darker from here.